as marketers, we talk about emotion and we want to connect, but it's still so transactional. And this is really moving from transactional to connection. And it really takes it to a different level. It's really fundamentally about the DNA of your company.
Today on Strategy Shorts, I'm joined by the wonderful Kat Kennan, who is the founder of Radical Customer Experience. But rather than me making a hash job of telling you what that's about, Kat, great to have you on the show. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background and backstory?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here. So I'm a marketing leader by training, and have been in this space for over 20 years. And the real insight behind radical customer experience comes with my own trauma. So in 2019, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD and realized that I was perceiving marketing messages very differently. Whether it was the imagery or the copy, maybe getting triggered where I ordinarily wouldn't have. And I knew there was something in it, that it was around customer experience and that it was around individual life experience, but wasn't quite sure how it would scale for a marketer yet. And so honestly, that took me a few years to figure out. And now the company works in sort of two buckets. One as a marketing consultancy, where we advise primarily consumer facing brands on how to market with empathy and compassion. And then we also have an analytics product or a customer insights product that's called Radical Human Intelligence. And it has that same lens and is primarily a survey tool that backs the philosophy with data.
So we're in very interesting territory in this episode because we speak to a lot of marketers, brand strategists, and facilitators and workshoppers, those kinds of things. And normally it's kind of like, here's a quick hack, here's a quick way of upgrading your deliverables today. Like, here's a marketing strategy or here's a framework that you can use. So I'm really interested to dive into this subject with you because that lens of empathy is so important. And we often don't really think about the emotional connections and the emotional relationship. We know as marketers and brand strategists that we're trying to elicit an emotional reaction. Like, that's the whole gig.
Yeah.
But I don't know how often we think through that lens of empathy and the other interactions and other emotional responses that we might trigger in people. So I think this is really, really fascinating place for us to be today. And I know that you're going to give us kind of some simple ways in and simple approaches to that as well. But you also wrote a book recently, a best-selling author. So why don't you give us a little bit of background about the book and why you wrote it and what it's been doing for readers?
Yeah. So I put out a collaboration, and my piece of it is called Beyond the Mask. Really with the idea that, even now, but particularly in the past, we're all expected to sort of wear a mask at work. And like, we're a home self and a work self, right? And there the two shall meet, which is not realistic at all. We all carry everything with us, whether it's trauma or, more positive emotions. And so I put together both a guideline that talks about psychological safety, that talks about how to make your workplace more trauma informed. And then I also get to tell some um, pretty hilarious anecdotes from my career, which I'm sure that we've all had.
Well, it sounds like we're already going to need another episode to dive into some of those hilarious anecdotes for sure.
Yeah.
So trauma-informed and inclusive marketing. I think that's the broad sweep really of what we're going to be talking about for the remainder of this episode. Before you kind of dive into the nuts and bolts of what you're talking about, give us more of a feel about who you're speaking to and what you want them to take away from what you're going to talk about.
Yeah. So I'm definitely speaking to marketers, say marketing director and up, thinking about really how to connect with your customer. Maybe you're facing a challenge like a lot of customer churn and trying to figure out what the issue is. And I think as marketers, we talk about emotion just like you hit on, right? And we want to connect, but it's still so transactional. And this is really moving from transactional to connection. and it really takes it to a different level. So with transactional, you may really connect with a customer and you may really build loyalty. But at the end of the day, you are fulfilling a need that they need. Like, I need this product, check, right? I really love this brand because they offer interesting things in their marketplace. But that's not true connection. And when you build that loyalty through a true emotional connection, the it's so much deeper. And it's not going to go away because a new competitor comes onto the market. It's really fundamentally about the DNA of your company.
Really, we're focusing on how do you create partners out of consumers by building in true emotional connection. That's not just based on needs and making a transaction, because as you say, when a new
Yep.
competitor comes along and they can do it slightly better, then people will migrate. It's actually how do you build a deeper kind of relationship with your consumer.
Yeah.
So that is really interesting. Why don't you take us through some of your thought process, some of the framework that goes with that?
Yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So I use something called the 3 R's framework. Obviously, now everybody already knows that I love the word radical, right? And use it in everything. But my 3 R's is radical empathy, radical vulnerability, and radical authentic investment. And, certainly empathy is, what kind of messages are you pushing out? Who are you really speaking to? And are you going to connect with them versus transact with them? Vulnerability looks a bit different. Like, we see so many PR crises constantly, and brands really, for the most part, unintentionally stepping in something. And I'm sure as marketers, all of us are like, oh, thank goodness it wasn't me, right? It wasn't my brand. Because it can possibly it happen to all of us. But it's, if you make a mistake, will you acknowledge it? And if you need to apologize, will you mean it? It isn't paying lip service. It isn't just the default apology. It's something so much deeper. And when it comes to authentic investment, it's really making sure that, whatever your passion issue is as a brand, it needs to be fully integrated. So, for example, the time of cause marketing or donating your share of your profits, it's over. Consumers are way too savvy for that. It needs to be something that's fully integrated. So think of Patagonia and sustainability. You can't really think of them as separate issues. Or maybe you're really invested in your local community, but this isn't like donating a park bench or, cleaning up the highway. This is something so much more. Maybe it's training the next generation of workers. Maybe it's just providing a lot of local resources that don't give you an immediate benefit, but really benefit the community in which you live and your employees live.
I think this is really interesting. And I wonder if actually for lots of brands, when, lots of brands are huge juggernauts, they're very, very complex machines, right? And I think it can be really difficult to think through, well, we've had this challenge about empathy, but
Yep.
actually the whole organization isn't really structured around that way of thinking. So it can be really complicated for brands to move in that direction. But
Yep.
the authentic investment piece, I think, is a really interesting way in for brands. You mentioned Patagonia right there. You said, Patagonia sustainability have become inseparable. And actually, loads of brands at very senior levels understand CSR,
Yep.
they understand
Yeah.
responsibility, they understand environmental issues.
Yep.
And actually, that might be a really good way in because that's a common ground that people are already gathering around. So
Yep.
maybe you can start there in order
Yep.
to address some of these bigger territories or more complicated spaces to navigate by using something solid like authentic investment as your
Yep.
place to start. I think that's really, really interesting. So, thinking through how to make this real, and I guess I've jumped the gun there and kind of already thrown in my few cents worth. But in terms of encouraging people, where do they start with dealing with this empathy question within their marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. The number one thing I recommend is doing a content audit. And that's something we're already doing, right? We're already looking at our content, what we've scheduled, what we've done in the past, ideally, to think through engagement and maybe what could be improved upon. But, I like to, even if it's a month or a quarter of content, pull it into a spreadsheet. You probably already have it, to be honest, right? you know where did this get posted, what's the copy, who are we sending it to, and then think about, like, are there possible triggers around this content. So, I put together a mock example just this morning and thought about, Thanksgiving here in the US, which obviously just happened, and a packaged food brand. And, Thanksgiving, while it's a really big holiday and also is followed by Black Friday and Cyber Monday, right? So, really important sales wise for brands. But what can be triggering is a lot of people may have a difficult relationship with their families. Maybe there are people that, like, don't have family around, and it can be a really lonely time of year. And so this isn't getting into any privacy issues at all, but with this lens, knowing that it could be a triggering time, right? Because your emails, your social posts, everything you're sending out is going to be about the holiday and, likely promotions around the holiday. But, knowing that it could be triggering, can you rewrite the language? Is there a way to put it out with more empathy? And honestly, lean into technology. Like, we have Chat GPT now, or whatever tool you're using. Why don't you put in your tweet or your post or your email and say, hey, like, what's a more empathic lens to this? Can you generate this for me? And it doesn't mean that that's your final copy, but it's somewhere to start. And, you can look of what you had created to begin with versus what's recommended. And I think it really, really helps brands, and it's a really good way to start.
Do you think as well that, for brands who actually reworking the copy or kind of taking a different approach to a sales campaign like Black Friday, for example,
Yep.
might be unrealistic to really, if you're part of a big machine, you
Yep.
might not be able to bring too many people on board with, I guess, pivoting around the positioning. Like you want
Yep.
hard sales messages, you want to
Yep.
maximize your
Yeah.
your return on your investment. But perhaps another way could be that actually if you've got this kind of campaign, this sales heavy campaign, which you're aware, you've done the thinking, you're beginning to think through that empathetic lens. You're aware that actually that's not going to work for some people. Would you also
Yep.
say, look, maybe instead of not doing that, think about putting out some counterweight messages as well? Like, what if you
Mhm.
also, in parallel, ran another campaign which lent
Yep.
into that empathetic side? Do you think that would be a good way of, I guess, bringing some balance to that kind of sales messaging?
Yeah, absolutely. I can quickly talk through another example too, which is perhaps even more tangible. So let's think about Mother's Day or Father's Day, right? And, for many people, we've lost a parent. We maybe don't talk to parents or talk to our kids. And something I can't imagine, but, there's a brand here called Uncommon Goods. And when we spoke about loyalty earlier, I was definitely in the first bucket, right? Extremely loyal to them, but it was still transactional. And several years ago, I got a text message from them because I love them enough to get emails and texts, right? And the message was, hey, we know this time of year is tough for many of you. Click here to opt out of our Mother's Day messaging. Right. And, for me as a human being, it happened to be my first Mother's Day without my mom. Right. But as a marketer, I'm like, oh, they're so smart. They're segmenting their database instead of having someone unsubscribe because they're like, I can't take it anymore. Not one more email, not one more social post. I hate it. You're keeping them in your world, in your database. You're just not communicating around this one specific niche that might be really triggering for them. And I think that's when you move to connection. You go from transaction to connection. I think that's so, so important. And whether you call it empathy marketing or trauma informed marketing, it doesn't matter. It's that you have a more empathy driven lens. And, there's a certain segment of your customers where that's really going to resonate for them. And you never have to get into privacy. You never need to know, like, what the specific situation with anyone is, but you can really speak to them and make them feel seen. And for the customers it doesn't really hit for, they're still going to appreciate it. They're not going to be mad about it, right? And so you've done something that's taken you 5 minutes to put together a text campaign. And, suddenly you're on your way, right? You're on your way to leading with empathy.
Yeah, that really smart marketing tactics, from a strategic point of view, using that as an opportunity to understand and segment. It's just really smart, but
Yeah.
doing it in such a way that gives people an opportunity to choose when they back away from your brand, builds trust, it builds a better relationship. So I think that's a really, really, you know, really smart example. Would you say, therefore, that you mentioned before using AI tools and chat GPT to create quick ways to reappraise some of the content you've already produced? Would you
Yeah.
say that that's your kind of like one top tip? Like if people were going to log off when they finish listening to this
Yeah.
episode, that's the thing they need to do like right away. Quick audit of a few headlines, throw them into chat GPT, easy for me to say, and then take from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think AI or other emerging tech is very frequently viewed with sort of a cold lens or like, right, it's machine learning, right? But lean into it, like make it work for you, you know? I mean, it can figure out the definition of empathy just as well as we can. So, let it work for you. At least let it give you a version one of whatever the new lens is with your content. I think it's so smart to lean into the tech that way.
That's it. And I think it's just a great first step, right? This is a broad subject. It's full of complexity and richness, and it's dynamic, and sometimes it can be difficult to step into those new spaces, especially if you're like a marketer who's got like a billion jobs to do on any given day. Actually, I
Yeah.
think that's a really simple first step, like a really simple first adventure into this more traumatic informed marketing and empathy inspired marketing. Kat, it's been so great to have you on the show. We could have talked for a lot longer, I think, but maybe another time. So thank you for spending some time with us today. Let's speak again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.